Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you want to see next.
While the tentacles were devouring everything that moved at the bottom of the ocean, Lu Sheng began to concentrate, forming bubbles in the water. He closed his eyes and decided it was time to enter the dream space to train a bit while his body took care of feeding him. The three eyes on his abdomen were shining intensely, searching for food. In the dream space, everything was chaos, buildings were destroyed, and there was no trace of human life, making it a perfect place to train. Once Lu Sheng arrived in the dream space, a zombie thought it had found food and tried to attack him by surprise. But our boy reacted in time. He clenched his fist, turned around, and delivered a strong punch to the zombie's jaw. His mission was to harvest the remaining memories of this place's great warriors. Another zombie appeared. Lu Sheng delivered a powerful punch, defeating it without much effort. He began to observe the zombie's corpse with a calm expression. In total, he had cleared 3 streets, defeating a total of 8 zombies with the same power as martial warriors. Among them were 5 level 7 and 3 level 8 zombies, with power similar to that of a grandmaster. In front of him was a pile of corpses from the zombie warriors he had defeated. His attention was fixed on them. Nowadays, with perfect martial arts, he had a total of 50 types of zombies with different martial wills, all fused with his willpower. As he observed the corpses, a question came to his mind. He did not know if there would be a qualitative transformation when there were 100 types of zombies. He decided to stop thinking about the matter, intertwining his hands, closing his eyes and sitting on the ground to meditate. Now it was just time to wait for his wounds to heal a bit more so that later he could eliminate the cells before leaving. But then he remembered something, opened his eyes and with a serious gaze decided to check the information in the system's database. He called Aying and asked her to access his personal information. The sexy Aying began to manifest herself, closed her eyes and nodded her head. Our boy started watching her in silence. Not long after, several red windows of the system appeared in front of him. Lu Sheng's eyes filled with curiosity, and he began reading the information. Now he was sure that the information in the system's database about his future was fabricated. But what was clear was that the other stored data were real. Lu Sheng placed his hand under his chin and with a curious gaze began carefully reading through the information displayed on the system window. Martial arts inheritance, medicinal recipes, resource points, they were very important aids, and the key to accessing deeper hidden information within the system was obtaining more permissions. Just then, the eyes of our boy widened with surprise. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. In front of him was a window with the photograph of Zhao Jai, and in another photo appeared Lu Sheng next to the corpse of the martial saint from the Extreme Dojo. In Ninghai, after severely injuring the martial saint from the Extreme Dojo, Lu Sheng had disappeared while being gravely injured after the fight. However, after 3 years he had returned to kill Zhao Jai, defeating martial saint Lin Zhengyu and overcoming martial saint Tan Zhong. Lu Sheng knew that this information was false since Zhao Jai hadn't died, but he decided not to pay much attention to it as sooner or later he was going to die. The system began to display personal information about Lu Sheng. After a battle, our boy's body was surrounded by golden energy. At the age of 25 he had reached level 9, becoming the youngest martial saint in the history of the martial path, known as a perfect being, showing his strength to everyone and there was no worthy rival capable of facing him. Lu Sheng appeared in front of hundreds of men dressed in black clothing. At the age of 30, he had founded the sacred martial sanctuary and spread martial arts throughout the world, making a massive contribution to the development of human martial civilization. And under his tutelage, 10 more martial saints emerged. Seeing this, his eyes filled with joy, causing a proud smile to spread across his face. Previously, he remembered having read that he was known as the strongest being under heaven. Now that he had reached a higher level and did not know why he had lost that title, his mind filled with curiosity and he decided to keep reading to find out. The system began to display the image of Lu Sheng releasing a powerful and malevolent energy. At 100 years old, he had reached level 10, thus becoming the first level 10 expert in the history of the martial path, paving the way for level 10 for future generations and receiving the honorary title of martial ancestor. In the following 2 years, the world lost track of Lu Sheng, and people came to the conclusion that the martial saint might have left Blue Planet and traveled toward the stars of the universe. While little Aying was floating nearby, a smile spread across Lu Sheng's face and he couldn't help but feel happy. He didn't know what it meant to be a martial ancestor, questioning if it was a title similar to Confucius from his past life, someone far superior to any god that existed on Earth, and could be considered a supreme name destined to endure for generations. Lu Sheng's eyes filled with surprise and fear, causing him to start sweating. He panicked, realizing that something was not right. With an expression full of fear, he began to recall when that bastard Zhao Jai had taken the card out of his mouth. The card was a protection talisman from a level 10 warrior, which demonstrated that this world should have originally had the path of level 10. He didn't know how it was possible that he had been the one to open this path. To him, this was very strange, but he thought the reason behind it was that the information in the system's database wasn't complete, causing a significant deviation in future predictions. Lu Sheng calmed down, turned toward Ying, and with a calm expression explained that at the top of this world's pyramid there were still many secrets he did not understand. Now that he was a martial ancestor, he thought his access level should no longer be low, so he asked her to please check his permissions. Ying began to observe Lu Sheng in silence, until several seconds later, she accessed the system's database, revealing that he had a historical evolution as a 10-star character. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with excitement. He couldn't help but smile since before he only had a level 7 clearance and now it had directly risen by 3 levels. He adjusted his jacket with his hand, and his attention focused on Ying. His eyes filled with joy because according to his previous experiences, level 7 clearance opened the path to advance from 7 to 8. Now that he had reached level 10, the system should open the way for him to progress from level 10 to 11. He had completely cleared the path from level 9 to level 11, so he asked her to bring out all the cultivation techniques of level 11. Ying extended her hand toward the system window and using her powers, she began to modify the system's information. Lu Sheng started observing silently with a curious gaze, ready to see how to ascend to level 11. Not long after, the system began creating a window with books and several scrolls of parchment. Lu Sheng waited until the system finished loading. The system window disappeared, leaving the books and scrolls of parchment on the ground. He picked up one of the books, opened it, and began reading attentively. The first 5 were more advanced chapters than he had learned before, the last 4 were new. His attention focused on a new technique called the Art of 5 Seasons Fists, which had been created by Wang He. It was said that in ancient times, between heaven and earth, besides spring, summer, autumn, and winter, there existed a 5th season. And when the 5th season arrived, 10 suns would appear in the sky. The light and heat were capable of burning mountains, rivers, and lands until they were dry and withered. All living beings perished under the scorching heat, turning the world into an oven. Lu Sheng's eyes widened in surprise as he realized that the Art of 5 Seasons Fists traced back to ancient martial arts to recreate the terrifying scene of 10 suns in the sky at once. For him, this martial art was grandiose and majestic. It turned out that Shi Shengning's supreme master level called 10 Suns in the Sky had been derived by imitating Wang He's fist style. Lu Sheng closed the book and his mind filled with curiosity. He picked up a scroll and decided it was time to read it. He opened the scroll and his expression changed, his gaze filled with confusion, his mind filled with questions and despair since he could not understand anything written on it. The scroll began to emit a powerful blue aura. Our boy's head started to smoke, but even so he decided to continue reading, making him feel furious. He read about the founder of the Yang Yishuo technique and did not know what this technique was about or what relation it had with martial arts. For him, reading this was like reading a dictionary. Now his head hurt. But as he continued reading, his eyes widened in surprise. Even though he didn't understand it very well, this technique only talked about how to construct the internal universe, the connection between the external and internal universe, and its construction. Additionally, it mixed a large number of theories of possibilities. To him, this was nothing more than an academic article and could not be considered a technique. Moreover, this technique had a surprisingly high level. It didn't take him long to realize that this was the process for ascending from level 11 to level 12. Lu Sheng, somewhat angry and confused, closed the scroll and left it on the ground. He was barely at level 8 and for now understood nothing, so he decided to forget about it and leave difficult things for later. He picked up another book, opened it with a curious expression, and began reading attentively. He decided that it was better to take a look at the 5 Seasons technique. He started imagining the entire universe. Honestly speaking, he knew that if he managed to learn how to use the internal universe, then he would obtain history's strongest supreme combat technique. No other martial art or martial skill could compare with it, since after all no martial art could be fiercer than using an internal universe to strike someone. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with seriousness and his attention fixed on the book. He had already reached the legendary 5th realm, and with this level 11 fist technique, no one knew what kind of power he was going to unleash. He started to gaze at his hand, which was emitting martial flames. His eyes were full of determination as he thought that with the fist of the 5 Seasons technique, he might even be able to challenge powerful warriors of level 10 or higher. He placed his hand over his chest and absorbed the power he had in his hand. His eyes began to shine with excitement, causing a smile to appear on his face. He clenched his fist and swore to kill the powerful level 10 warrior who had left him gravely injured the next time they met. Next to him was Ayin, and her body was shining. He turned to her, started observing her, and asked her to show all the content of the Flame Project. She began projecting a system window and explained that he did not have sufficient permissions to access the content. Lu Sheng remained silently watching, not knowing what was happening. He placed his hand under his chin, and his eyes filled with surprise. This did not seem strange to him, so he decided to elevate his permissions to level 11 before being able to unravel all the secrets of the dream space. He closed his eyes, started shaking his head, and using his hand, he closed the system window. His most important goal now was to reach the 9th level from the 8th. He decided to see how the path to level 9 was achieved. He used the technique called total concentration, making golden flames appear around his body. First, he had to complete the fusion of the body, energy, and spirit into a single entity. Then, he had to connect with the sky and the earth, using the force of the world to forge his own martial seal, and build a martial projection. This was where the difference between the most powerful warriors really began to show. He began imagining the spirit of a powerful martial warrior with 4 arms, and compared to it, the user of the martial projection seemed like an ant. According to what was mentioned, the standard for a martial projection had different qualities. If the martial projection was less than 1,000 meters tall, it was low quality. From 1,000 to 5,000 meters tall, it was medium quality, and more than 5,000 meters tall, it was high quality. Lu Sheng's eyes filled with seriousness, and he couldn't help but go into shock. Our boy began to recall the martial projection of the martial saint from the Supreme Dojo. His miserable martial projection didn't even reach 500 meters, being of the lowest quality, and calling him a village martial saint was even too generous. The reality was that this guy only relied on earthly devotion to sustain his divinity, being trash. Lu Sheng placed his hand under his chin and sank into thought. The martial projections condensed with natural breathing techniques and crystal visualization were both of maximum quality. His eyes began to shine with joy, as he had an endless number of techniques and martial arts at his disposal. If he could combine these superior quality projections and fuse them all into his perfect martial art, he didn't know what kind of projection would emerge. He started imagining the projection of the spirit of a powerful demon with a murderous gaze. Lu Sheng closed the book and decided not to think too much about it since daydreaming would make him lose his way. And besides, fusing all this was incredibly difficult. He had no idea where to start, but it didn't matter because the first step was slowly merging his body, energy, and spirit. He began cracking his knuckles, and his eyes filled with excitement as a smile appeared on his face. In the end, if he managed to learn the 5 Seasons Fist technique with the strength of his ever-increasing immortal cells, even if he got stuck at the peak of level 8 for some time, he would still be able to kill martial saints as if they were mere chickens.